Bobby Bear's life reads like a long, quiet lament shaped by hardship, loss, and the stubborn pursuit of music. Rising from extreme poverty in Depression-era America, he became known for his deeply emotional storytelling style in country music. Yet behind the recognition lay a life marked by repeated betrayals, personal tragedy, and creative struggles. His journey is not only about fame, but about survival through art and the emotional cost of turning suffering into song. This is the story of how a gifted voice carried generations of pain, while the man behind it slowly faded into isolation and obscurity. Early life in Iron, Ohio. Bobby Bear was born in Iron, Ohio in 1935, during one of the harshest periods of American economic history. The Great Depression shaped every aspect of his childhood, leaving his family in constant struggle. Food was scarce, warmth was a luxury, and stability was almost non-existent. His early memories were defined by survival rather than innocence, as even basic needs required sacrifice. Growing up in a small, struggling town along the Ohio River, Bobby learned quickly that life offered little comfort. These early conditions built the foundation of resilience and emotional depth that would later define his music. Childhood loss and hardship tragedy struck Bobby Bear at a very young age when his mother died, leaving an emotional void that never truly healed. Her passing was not marked by drama, but by exhaustion and hardship, reflecting the brutal reality of the era. Soon after, his family disintegrated under financial pressure, and the children were separated. Bobby was forced into labor while still a child, working long hours in fields and performing heavy tasks far beyond his age. This early exposure to responsibility and loneliness shaped his worldview, teaching him that stability was temporary and that loss could arrive without warning or reason. Discovery of music. Amid hardship, Bobby discovered an old radio that introduced him to the world of country storytelling. Through voices like Hank Williams and others, he found emotional honesty that mirrored his own pain. Music became more than entertainment. It became a refuge from his difficult reality. He taught himself guitar with limited means, developing raw but heartfelt skill. Each chord represented escape, and each lyric became a way to process emotions he could not express in daily life. This moment marked the beginning of his identity as a storyteller, transforming suffering into creative expression that would define his future career. First, love and tragedy. In his youth, Bobby experienced a brief moment of happiness when he met a girl named Linda. Their relationship offered hope and emotional connection in an otherwise difficult world. They shared dreams of leaving their small town and building a future together, supported by music and love. However, tragedy struck again when Linda died suddenly in a car accident. This loss shattered Bobby's fragile sense of stability and deepened his emotional isolation. At her funeral, instead of outward grief, he internalized his pain and expressed it through music, marking the beginning of his deeply mournful songwriting style. Struggle and Nashville rejection. Driven by ambition, Bobby eventually moved toward Nashville in search of opportunity. However, the reality of the music industry proved harsh and unforgiving. Despite his talent, he faced repeated rejection from record labels that preferred more polished and marketable artists. He lived in poverty, often sleeping in his car and surviving on minimal food while chasing studio opportunities. Nashville's rigid expectations clashed with his raw, honest style. These experiences reinforced his belief that authenticity was not always rewarded, and that success required more than talent. Still, he continued to write, driven by necessity rather than hope. The All-American Boy. Theft to Bobby's breakthrough moment came with a satirical song that reflected the artificial nature of fame in the music industry. The recording gained massive popularity, climbing charts and receiving widespread radio play. However, the success was stolen from him when another individual was credited as the performer. Bobby received neither recognition nor fair compensation. The betrayal devastated him, revealing the exploitative nature of the industry he had trusted. In anger and despair, he destroyed his radio and briefly abandoned his musical ambitions. This moment marked a turning point. pushing him toward military enlistment as an escape from emotional collapse. Military years and silent pain. During his time in the military, Bobby's emotional wounds did not heal, but instead became quieter and more contained. He performed his duties without complaint, yet carried the memory of his stolen success everywhere he went. Fellow soldiers often listened to his hit song without realizing he was its true creator, a silence Bobby chose not to break. This period became one of internal reflection rather than recovery. Music still existed in his mind, but it was now tied to loss and invisibility. Even in uniform, he remained an artist whose voice was heard but never acknowledged. Returned to Nashville and bitter fame. When Bobby returned to Nashville, he found a changed but still unwelcoming industry. His voice was recognized, yet his identity remained overshadowed by earlier exploitation. Record labels viewed him cautiously, unsure how to categorize his raw emotional style. Rather than conform, Bobby embraced creative independence, producing music that blended folk and country with deeper emotional weight. However, this artistic honesty often conflicted with commercial expectations. Nashville admired his talent but struggled to support his authenticity. As a result, he existed between recognition and rejection, respected in theory but often excluded in practice. Artistic isolation and reinvention. As years passed, Bobby Bare evolved into a more introspective and independent artist. His songwriting became deeply personal, reflecting years of hardship, betrayal, and emotional endurance. However, the changing landscape of country music left little space for his slow, narrative-driven style. While new trends emerged, Bobby remained committed to authenticity over adaptation. This commitment led to increasing isolation within the industry. Though his influence persisted, he gradually faded from mainstream attention. His music became a quiet testament to lived experience, valued by those who listened closely but overlooked by a rapidly evolving commercial world. Outro Bobby Bare's story is ultimately one of resilience, shaped by loss and artistic integrity tested by an unforgiving world. His life demonstrates how creativity can emerge from suffering, yet also how easily it can be overshadowed by exploitation and neglect. Though he may not have received lasting recognition in his later years, his music carried emotional truth that resonated beyond fame. In the end, his legacy is not defined by industry approval but by the honesty embedded in his songs. His voice remains a reminder that some stories endure even when the storyteller is forgotten.